Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of E-Commerce Joe. This episode is part 2 of a 2-part episode. In part 1 we speak about business basics. Mark and I cover a lot of topics that new businesses will be interested in. In this episode we speak about Xero, which is a cloud-based accounting platform or a bookkeeping platform. Mark and I speak about what is Xero and how to use it, and we give you a brief overview of what it is and how it works. If you've got any questions about Xero or anything else that Mark and I spoke about, leave a comment below. And yeah, hope you enjoy the show. So this is your Xero account.
So this is our first challenge. There is no one in the world that talks about Xero from a UK point of view and benefits and how you should go around setting it up. So you're going to have to excuse how this is set up. We thought the concept was you just add all of the accounts, and our understanding of accounts is anything that you use to transact money or store money in. So PayPal, for example, is kind of like an account, even though it's not. It's more of an intermediary. It allows us to receive payments. It allows us to hold those payments before we can then move them to, let's say, our business account. And so you can see that's why in our example, we've got a PayPal account and then we've got a business account. And then we thought we'd put another business account on there, which reflected where we was moving all of our tax money to. So we thought we'd be quite clever if we could work out tax on the fly, or if Xero had this clever feature that it could do that for you. It would just move the coins into the right place. When the tax came, we wouldn't panic, we wouldn't shout, because just like the Xero adverts on YouTube said, it was super quick. You don't need an accountant. You can do it all yourself.
They create a lot of issues for us as accountants for that. I think I remember saying to you before, they make it look so easy that then people go alone for, like I said, like 18 months and then they're like, help. And it's easier for us to do things from scratch than try and like fix stuff.
So my first question is that the best practice? Would you say to add all of your accounts, or would you say, hang on, in this example, you don't really need to add your PayPal account if you're going to move the PayPal account money into your business account anyway?
No, that's is a really good question. And you're actually right. You should add every single account on it for bookkeeping and accounting purposes. As I said earlier, as a limited company, you need to show all of your money at your year end on your balance sheet, which if we were to look at it, you would go there. And if you don't have those accounts on there, then your bookkeeper or your accountant or you aren't going to know where that money is, and it's not going to be accounted for. So you did the right thing by including it.
Okay.
With PayPal, what people might find as well is that if you have extra currencies on there, so although you only have one PayPal account, the way that Xero works, you need to actually create a separate account for each currency. So if you've got a virtual assistant in the Philippines and you pay them in Filipino pesos, you'll need to have, through PayPal, you'll need to have a PayPal PHP account. If you make purchases in USD, you'll need to have a PayPal USD account.
And GBP PayPal there.
Yeah, and I think in recent years, Xero's got really good at maybe creating those automatically. It used to be, when I started using it like 8 years ago, that each one had to be added manually and there wasn't actually instructions on that. So one of the things that was really confusing for people was how to deal with like foreign exchange and foreign currencies on Xero, but they've made it much easier now. One thing to say though, if you're a sole trader, you don't need to add everything. And I actually would try and stop sole traders using Xero because I think it can complicate things too much and you can use spreadsheets to do things. But if you do want to use it, only use your business account. And if you are, so these 2 bank accounts that you've put on here, these 2 tied accounts, just to check, they're in your limited company's name, aren't they?
Correct.
Yeah. So don't add your personal bank accounts or personal credit cards, only include your company accounts, your company PayPal, that sort of thing. So you've done the right thing.
Okay, great. And then I guess, and forgive me, I know you may have said this to me before when we previously spoke, but for the sake of this catch up, the whole idea then is to make your balances match. So if we took the first tile, if I call it that, where it says
Mm-hmm.
outlet, the name of the company,
Mm-hmm.
current account, it has a balance in Xero and then it has a statement balance. So the idea is you want those two to be exactly the same.
Yes and no. So the balance in Xero and the statement balance, they show two slightly different things. So the statement balance, that is, one thing you see here, it says reconcile 104 items. Those are 100, that means you've got 104 transactions on Xero that haven't been reconciled. And reconciled is just a fancy word for categorized. So when you get used to using it all the time in accounting, but that normal non-accountants, you kind of go, what does that mean? It's nothing
Okay.
special. It just means categorize.
Reconcile just means categorize
It
what
just
happened.
means categorize. Yeah. It's just, we try and make ourselves sound important. So you've got those 104 items currently sitting on Xero, and I'll go into that. I'll click this button in a moment, but for now, there's 104 uncategorized transactions.
Yeah.
This statement balance, oh, this statement balance, the 7704, that is showing that if you categorized every single transaction in Xero, so all the money received and all of the money spent, it would come out to 7704. So that's all the money coming in, all the money going out. Whereas the balance in Xero, the one above, that's saying that of the categorized transactions that are in there, this is what the balance is. So if you've categorized, let's just say you've only categorized one transaction currently, it would have been an expenditure of 314.67. So the balance goes from 0 to negative 314.67. So what you should find, like, the reason I said you don't want them to match necessarily is because if you just went through this and clicked this reconcile button and reconciled or categorized all 104 transactions, these two will balance and they'll be the same, but that doesn't mean that they're correct. So, and the reason I say that is because if we look at your bank account now, if we go into the business account and look at the statement, it might actually not be 77.04. And that's more important. Making sure this statement balance is correct, especially when you set your Xero account up, is much more important, because if it isn't 77.04, then it means some of the transactions are actually missing. So even if you categorized all of them, they're not there, because let's say you're supposed to have £100 in there now, it means that £32.96 is missing. And that's kind of a mistake that people make, which is really easy to miss, because when you connect the account, when you set your Xero account up, each bank is different, but they usually only go back a certain number of days. So if someone's starting their Xero account after trading for 9 months, it might only have 3 months worth of data there rather than all 9 months. And one of the first things that you should do, and that we do, is once we make sure that before we start categorizing or reconciling any transactions, we make sure that all the data is there, and we check that by making sure that the statement balance matches the actual physical bank balance. And then once that's there, you then want to get these to Xero, to match, sorry. But again, you don't want to go gung-ho and do it wrong. You want to make a match, but also have everything categorized correctly. But so yeah, that's the difference between those numbers and there.
Thank you. Okay, and then I guess to this big piece then, the whole reconciling and categorizing. So I've left them because I wanted to see how you do it, what would be good practice. So I'm very excited to see this. This is the bit that nobody shows you on YouTube, or I've not been able to find any footage of at all.
Oh, I've never felt so much pressure to click this reconcile button. So they'll click on that. Now this is not as glamorous as you'd expect after that build up.
No.
This pop up, this little banner always appears whenever you first go there. Like, because I see it all the time. It's every time I use a new account, I just click hide. Some people don't know it, but it's just a bit nicer sometimes to see the full screen. The way these transactions work now, so I'll use the word, I might still use the word reconcile, but I'll try and use the word categorize just to make it easier.
No, that's fine. Get me into good behavior.
Yeah,
Reconcile.
no,
Understand
but yeah,
what I'm doing.
you've got here, these are your transactions in the left-hand column. So it shows this, if we click more details, it shows you all the data that Xero has in it for this transaction. So it's got the date, the payee, which is blank, reference is blank, description, which says about PayPal, the amount, the type, whether it's a credit or a debit. For non-accountants, I wouldn't worry about that. Check number, analysis code. You never really see these two. What this means is that Tide is sending 4 pieces of data through for each transaction, and you essentially, when going through it, you need to code them, but really you don't really have much to go by. Like, you've only got the description there, and as you know, like, that's essentially what you see on your bank statement, right? So all we're seeing here is a digital version of your bank statement, and we're having to tell Xero what that transaction is. And the way you do that, there are 4 options here. The most straightforward thing to cover first is this discuss button. So this is really useful for if you've got an accountant, or for your own sanity if you're leaving notes, and you can type notes in, and when you save them you can come back later, and they'll be there. So like for us, I might leave my initials and be like, what is this transaction? And then when you log in, if I said to you, oh, I've left notes on all of them, you'd see this and come in and you could delete it and leave a note.
So in that case, it was a security check. So when you sign up to PayPal, they do a security deposit?
Yeah. So sorry, I was going to go over that in a sec. So you've got the discuss tab, which is pretty straightforward. Then you've got these 3 tabs here. So match, create, and transfer. These are essentially how you categorize the transactions. Transfer is if it ever moves in between different bank accounts within your company. So what you say with this is this 1p came from GBP PayPal, which actually no, this wouldn't have done, because this came from PayPal themselves, not from your PayPal account. If you were moving money into your other bank account, you would say it was this one. So that's how you deal with kind of inter bank transfers for your own company. You would use this transfer button. And if you actually, before I talk about this, so that transactions in accounting, I think can be broadly categorized into 3 buckets. You've got like income and expenditure, sales or income, expenses, or other. For anyone who's kind of accounting, you've got profit and loss, like income and expenditure, or balance sheet items. But to keep it straightforward, I'd say think of it as either sales, expenses, or something else. If money's moving between your bank account, it's something else. That's where you would say transfer and go there. When you're on this create tab, this is kind of if you're trying to manually type in every single transaction and how you would code it. So you've got 3 things: who, what, and why. Who is always going to be who the transaction was from, so which supplier it was for. So like here, if we said it was from PayPal, you can, because it's not there, you would add a new contact. What, and this is where I guess what I was saying there, that it matters the essence of the transaction. So what is it? Is it sales? is it expense or is it something else? If so, in this case, this is something else because it's money that PayPal are giving you, but just to confirm your bank account. Regardless of what it is, there's Xero have like a default. It's known as chart of accounts group, and each of these is essentially a different category. You would then choose. I suppose the better way of saying it is basically, depending on what it is, you should choose it from this list. And if you don't see it on this list, pardon me?
Is this the categorizing piece?
Yeah. So this is where you're categorizing what it is. And there's a lot of stuff that's already in there. But this is really where I suppose you need sometimes accounting knowledge. Now, this one is actually probably one of the more unique ones. I would keep it as just interest income. So like you've got interest income, and I would then for the why always put a description of kind of as best a description as you can as to what it is. So like
Oh, so actually type a full-blown.
yeah, and it's not necessary, but because HMRC can go back so far, and because you might make a mistake or just you might forget what's happened, I find writing more is better, because if you ever then go back and look at that transaction, by writing stuff in your own words, it just jogs your memory. Like if this one might be straightforward, but let's say like in 3.5 years' time, I ask you about a transaction. If you've written like a little note, it's way easier to remember than if it's blank.
I agree.
And so that's just like a good habit. Now, the other tab to mention is the match tab. And this is partly where making sure you have your invoices comes in really handy. Essentially, if you add invoices properly, and we'll go over that in a sec, if you add them properly into Xero, then this will automatically try and suggest an invoice to you. So if you had an invoice in there for a penny, and in this case it would be a sales invoice because it's money received, it would appear on this list and it would go green. And I will just show you that now, just for the sake of it. So maybe just this, like creating a sales invoice won't apply too much to anyone listening because they're dealing with online marketplaces, and so your money will be dealt with by the marketplace and you'll receive it. It's partly what Link My Books or A2X do. They create a sales invoice, like a group, a batch sales invoice. But it's just for the sake of it. So for 1p. So here I've created an invoice, there's a description: test, 1 quantity, unit price 1. So it's come out as 1p, and I've accounted it to bank fees, but actually I want it to be interest income. What this will do is it will account for that penny, and it will say that penny's for interest income. If we go back into that PayPal account, there.
It was the top one we saw it in.
Sorry, you're right. Thanks. Yeah. So because we've put the invoice in already, Xero's is smart and says, well, you've got an invoice for a penny and you've also got money that's received for a penny. Are these the same? And that's what the match is. So if you put all your invoices in, sales or expenses, I'll show you the expense one in a moment.
So you do it for expenses as well.
Yeah. And then
That's okay.
What then happens, you don't have to think like, so, on the invoice, I said it was for interest received. When I match this money just goes against interest received rather than having to do it here. So
And why did we call it interest received? We just said that was the best suitable category for it.
for that, because it's a penny, it's one of these things where it kind of doesn't really matter. If you paid the penny back somewhere, I would put them to the same place. But like, because it's a penny, you can kind of almost put it anywhere.
Because you can see just where the mouse is, a similar thing was done again. So you can see a pound was given and a pound was then taken away.
This one,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a card refund. So
So no, it
is
would have
that
been
this
that one
one?
first. Yeah, and then the one
Yeah.
after it, give it back.
So
The
for
same.
that, you could put that to interest received, because what you're going to then say is, that's a pound received but a pound spent, so they would balance each other off. So it kind of doesn't matter because they balance off. I'd just put them to interest received, and then it doesn't matter. It more matters when you've got actual other transactions happening. So before I forget, let's talk about the purchase. So the expenses. So if you make a purchase, so there's what I'm going to show you now is slightly manual. It's better than doing stuff on spreadsheets, but there are other bits of software out there that do this. But I'll just talk through the manual process so that people can see the principles of it, and then show you something else afterwards. So if you're if you've make a purchase, and you know what, let's use a real example.
One for stock capital, or does it need a receipt?
So yeah, have you got a receipt, a purchase receipt somewhere?
You keep going down the list. There you go. The one at the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for that one, so it's 32.15. So we would add bills to pay. So bills to pay. So what I'm doing now on Receipt Bank is connecting Receipt Bank to your Xero account, and this is what we use with our clients for managing their expenses. But I just thought I'd show you it because it's quite cool.
Because you were saying it's quite manual, isn't it? So is this the automated part?
Yeah, so we'll do the manual part and then I'll show you the automated part as well. So we've had a brief break, and in that time, I have set up a Receipt Bank account, which is something I'll talk about in a moment for Mark. But to resume where we left off, we were going to be putting expense invoices into Xero to show you then how to start matching stuff. So what I'm going to do now is show you the manual method. So for people that don't want to pay for extra software, or for people that just want to do things themselves. And also the benefit of seeing this manual method is that it gives you a bit more of an understanding of the fundamentals behind Xero. So what all these things do. And then when we use the automated stuff or like the software, it'll make a bit more sense. So we were dealing with, I was going to show you this one invoice that you sent through to me. So it's limited. And what you've done here is you've bought, what have you bought? 195 each, and there's a low order fee they've put in there. So in total, you've got £32.15, and interestingly, they've got 5% VAT, which I don't know what they're
Maybe on the low order fee.
Yeah, maybe. That's really weird. I don't know if that's correct. Anyway, we'll presume it is correct. That's added an extra element to this transaction. But either way, £32.15, including VAT, so £26.50 with these two VAT elements. The manual way of dealing with it is you fill out this bill to pay. So you'd go business, bills to pay, and new bill. Or if you want to always take a shortcut, there's this plus symbol at the top with Xero, where you can say plus new bill and go to it. Now, when you manually put it in, and back in the day, this in itself was an absolute game changer, because just being able to type this information in was amazing, because before you had to type it all into a spreadsheet. But things have come further along even since then. So the date of the invoice is the 12th of August 2020. So you can put there. It's not copied it across. So 12th 2020. The reference is usually the order or invoice number. So I'm going to copy that, paste that. For item, I would say always ignore this column. This is for if you're using tracked inventory, which is probably a bit too technical to talk about, and it causes a lot of issues. So always ignore the item column. So you always put from, date, always keep the due date the same unless it is actually genuinely due in the future, invoice reference. Then the description, this is the why on, do you remember on the transactions you had the who, what, why? This would be the why. And for this, because there are 2 lines on it, I would actually put both on there. So we'll put that, and you bought 10 of them at 195. And
also, when you say the why, you mean the actual items on the inventory, not why you're buying them.
yeah, that's it. Because you would know in the future, like, what this was for. You could, in theory, just write like purchases for resale. The reason I split them is that you've got these 2 different VAT rates. So we'll also put the low order fee. And like you said, for some reason, this looks like it's 5%. So you got one of those, and it was 35p? No, £7. Okay, so we've put the 2 lines on. We need to say what they were for. If they're purchases for resale, I would always put them to cost of goods sold.
Ah, okay.
And then the low order fee, you could put it to something else. Because it's part of a purchase, I would also include it on this cost of goods sold. Xero now asks you about the tax rate. So you should select the tax rate of each line, and then it will calculate it. And it's really important you only do this if you are VAT registered. If you're not VAT registered, always put no VAT. And that's because Xero doesn't know, even though it knows if you're VAT registered or not, it will just it tries to calculate it anyway as if you are. So put no VAT if you're not VAT registered. If you are, put the rates in. So this was 20%, this was 5, and then that gives us 30.75, which is wrong. Now I don't know why. Where'd they get the 31? So I'd be intrigued to know where they got this 5%. That just doesn't look right, because we should have. So that's what we've got here, but they're saying that it's actually 32.5. It's really weird.
Bad example.
Yeah.
This is good though, because you've just helped us realize how we can tell if we're being ripped off or not.
Well, it could just be a genuine mistake. I don't know what they've added 5p. So 26.50. So that's what the subtotal is that they've got. 19.5 plus 7. Yeah, so they've just added
35p because they can.
well, they shouldn't. Don't think they should. Like, they've charged you for these goods, and then they've added VAT. So actually, they should only be charging you 26.50 plus VAT. But for some reason, they've just whacked on 35p. Very strange.
But we've learnt a lesson now, so now I can do a quick maths whenever I get a VAT invoice to see if we've been ripped off.
Yeah, I just added. I mean, why have you why have you added 35p on here?
I would
Like,
never have known to look at that, I must admit. So this is why this session was absolutely powerful.
yeah, I'm glad. I've never really seen that before, especially with a UK supplier. Like sometimes overseas ones can confuse
And
things,
it's from
but
a POS system as well, which surprised me. It wasn't
yeah,
even like he just typed it out. It was from a full-blown, a screen you type into, and it had a printer, and this came
yeah,
out. We've got a printed copy upstairs as well.
weird. All right. Anyway, let's presume that that is correct, right? So we've got that, and then we've got this one. How do we work out 5%? 0.35 divided by. It's like they've charged the £7 twice, actually. Look. Order fee, because 0.35 divided by 0.05 is 7. So if we add that on, say that, but they've literally just added 35p on.
No, you got one at 20%, one at 5%. The tax rate.
Yeah, but they've added 30, so it's 35p. So 35p at 5%, if you gross that up, would be 7. So it's as if they've charged you 35p for this 7, but also they've so 20% of the two combined, of the 7 and the 1950, is 530. It's like they've also charged 35p, which is 5% of 7 on top. Now this, I believe, okay, this is where we have to add 1 point. So I just went off piste there. You basically should never be clicking this button and changing it, but if you have to, that's what you do. So to go back to what we were doing, you add the invoice on. Usually your supplier wouldn't have ripped you off and they haven't added 35p onto it. We've input all that data into there, and then what you would do is you can drag and drop the PDF onto it, and it will then be there for future use. So, or if you ever want to see it, and then you can approve it. So that's there. We approve it.
Okay, and so if you would have on the left-hand side just hit save, that would have just left it in a draft state for somebody to approve later on, say if he's working with a virtual team or growing out and had more people.
Yeah, exactly. Worth pointing out here before we talk about Receipt Bank, Xero have a software called HubDoc. I actually haven't used it because I've always used Receipt Bank, and Xero took over HubDoc, and one of my colleagues used it and said it wasn't as good. But Xero, it's worth exploring if someone doesn't want to use Receipt Bank. I just prefer it because I'm so used to using Receipt Bank. And we get, like, at the accountancy, we get discounted Receipt Bank subscriptions, so we use it. But yeah, so that's the invoice that's been put on manually.
Yeah.
And if we now go to the bank account and look for that payment before, so there's our PayPal one. So now it's automatically matched and it's showing there. And what you can see as well, by the way, is on your dashboard in Xero, we've put that 1 penny sales invoice. So that's currently showing as outstanding because we haven't matched it on the reconcile page. But we can also now see that you've got this 32.50 awaiting payment because, again, that's been matched and it's showing here. This icon means it's got an attachment, which is what I drag and dropped on it.
And that attachment's for HMRC, or just so if you need to put it back up,
that's for you, and that's for, again, like future reference. If you look at this in 36 months' time, at least you know that you've got it there. And again, you might wonder, like, what was it for? Have I done it right? Was that the right invoice? Was it a duplicate?
This is your library of information.
Yeah, but here it's shown as awaiting payment. When we go back to the reconciliation page, when we match it, and if we refresh the page, it's now no longer awaiting payment, it's now in paid. And so you'll have eventually all of your paid invoices will be here and you'll be able to search them. But one of the benefits of having this attachment is that you can always have it to look at. And again, if HMRC ever ask, you can tell them what it was for. If they were like, why is there a weird VAT amount? I don't know, but the supplier did genuinely charge you that. So you are within your right to reclaim that from HMRC.
Okay, so just to recap then, whenever you do any expenses, one, keep the receipts because in the future you might need them, and especially when you don't remember what they were for. In Xero, what you want to do then is you want to create an expense or a bill to pay, and that's used to align that back to reconcile, aka categorize what just happened.
That's it. Perfect. And if we go back to the dashboard quickly, you'll now see that that was 104 item. 104 items. It's now 103. I can't remember what that was, but that was slightly different.
7, I think, so it's dropped.
Yeah, but this one's still the same. And like I said, so that's because this is counting if all of these were reconciled, it will be that. That's how that works if you do it manually. So if someone's doing their own bookkeeping, I would advise doing that for every purchase because although it might seem really boring and tiring, it means that you can always show what payment was for what, like whether that's for sanity or anything like that, or a tax investigation. You can, like, there's not a legal requirement to do that. You could just use this match and create. And so instead of using the match and matching it, you could just type in the supplier's name. Like if we go down to, you know what? If we had that transaction, we could just type that information in, like what was it for? Purchase of goods. So if we imagine it was that one, we would say audio tech, it was cost of goods, purchases for resale. And then here you'd select the VAT rate.
What about the line items option?
That's the thing. So it's not as good doing it that way. So I would say try to avoid doing that and always match it to an actual invoice.
Okay, and can you from there still add a document, add a receipt from that little view there you have?
Let's try that. You can't do it from here, but if we reconcile this, and then if I find that transaction, so it's this one, I can go to the transaction and currently there's nothing here, but you can still drag and drop after the fact. So you can do it that way if you want. But what I was going to show you is using Receipt Bank to kind of save your time. This, if ever you need to remove something because you've done it wrong, as we can see, that actual transaction was for stock capital and it was money received. So I'm going to remove and redo it. And that means it goes back up here and there's 103 transactions again. So using Receipt Bank, while we had our break, you emailed through your invoice. So this same invoice that we had here, you emailed it into Receipt Bank. Now, what I'm going to first of all do is go to the invoice that we already created. I'm going to remove it. And before you remove you can't remove an invoice if there's a payment attached to it. So I'm going to remove the payment first, which then means you should have 104 transactions. I'm going to void this.
So void is how you remove bills.
bills that are unpaid. So we should now see 104, and I'm gonna show you receipt bank. So here is, so here's the receipt bank page. So you've emailed through now the invoice that we were looking at. But before you did that, you took a photo of a fuel receipt that you had. So one of the benefits of this, and it's this one here, yeah?
Yeah.
And yeah, so you can see on the invoice, I've not touched anything on it, but it's for £15.01, and it's on, where's the date? It's the 16th of the 10th, 20, and yeah, it's for fuel. Now, if we look on the right-hand side, we can see that already, quicker than I was even able to pick up on it there, the receipt bank has been like, it's the 16th of the 10th, 20. It's from Shell, which it is. It says it's for 1501. It's picked up the tax amount, which is 250. It said it's paid. It said the payment method. So it's tried to pick out the card, which I don't even know if that's right. I usually don't use these because they can complicate stuff, but it doesn't matter if you do. And it is categorized it as well. It said it's motor expenses, and these categories, because we've linked it to your Xero account, pull through from your Xero account. So if you'd created some different custom ones, they would be here. So what we can do, because this is all correct, rather than having to do what we did with the other invoice, which is manually type it out, you take the photo, you can kind of give it the once over, and then you're supposed to be able to publish it. Now this is, yeah, it goes straight into Xero, and then it would have been sitting there exactly how, I typed that other one in manually. And we can see here there's one that's in processing. So it says it's coming through the email.
Oh, that must be the one there.
Yeah. So sometimes it takes a while. But so the ideal thing.
I know it's probably stuck on their dodgy VAT.
Yeah, it could be. It really could be. It could be that it's saying like, what's going on here? Genuinely. So in an ideal world, like what we tell people, like our bookkeeping clients, is that all you have to do is every time you get a purchase invoice, if it's physical, like the fuel one that you got, take a photo of it. If it's digital, then, and you get it via email, forward it to the unique receipt bank email address that you get. And then from there, it goes into Xero, and then we deal with it. And so that way, if there's something dodgy, like a weird VAT rate, if there's if like it's gone into an unusual category, that we can apply a bit of common sense. But that kind of, the software has done loads of the heavy lifting for us, and then we'll like basically chase you if there are missing items or if there are ones that look unusual.
So
like
if we go back to, can I talk about an example that would be, it'd be brilliant for?
Yeah.
So if we go back to my the reconciliation page, the second tab,
Mm-hmm.
a very good one. If you were to probably go, you might have to go a few pages. So jump to page 5 if you can. I reckon would be if you scroll down.
Do you know how much the amount is that we're looking for?
No, it's a particular transaction that you should just see. There you go. Those Royal Mail ones, which they send you emails for. So, at the end of the transaction, it says, thank you so much. Here's your email. That's the sort of thing you would just set up like an inbox rule to say, if it says receipt in the subject title, forward the email and the attachment to Receipt Bank.
Exactly, yeah. And then there's another cool thing on Receipt Bank that says whenever you receive an invoice from this supplier, auto-publish it to Xero. So for Royal Mail, once you set up the rule for it and you say, well, Royal Mail is always going to be postage and shipping, or freight and courier, whatever you want to call it. When we get it, push it straight through, and then you don't even have to do the step on Receipt Bank because it's always going to be that category, and it just automatically goes through. And then what you do every day when you log into Xero, using this as an example, these would all be green, and it would be matching to all of those invoices.
I was going to ask, because how come it's picked up what it is, but it's not green like how yours is?
So for this one, because we're not matching it against an invoice,
It
what
has to go against an invoice.
yeah, so this is if you were trying to take a shortcut, like you can um they've
I
got
can do
they've
okay.
got a bit of what they would, I suppose, call like machine learning, where they know that previously you might have categorized something as Royal Mail, or maybe they just know Xero because they do so many millions of transactions that Royal Mail's probably postage and shipping. So you could just push OK.
But then going back to what you said before, that's not necessarily the best bit, because one, I won't be capturing the VAT right, and I won't have the receipts against it.
Yeah,
The physical or digital receipt.
exactly. And with Royal Mail, so if we did select 20% and say OK, I think if we refresh the page, Xero would suggest that for every transaction. But postage is a really good example because sometimes it's zero rated and sometimes it's 20%. It kind of depends on where the goods are going. So it's not good to always assume it's 20%, because if it was zero rated and you put it as 20%, you're overclaiming your VAT expenses, and that's the sort of thing you can get in trouble for.
Okay.
Obviously, it could be an honest mistake, but if you're doing like £15,000 worth of transactions a month, like those mistakes can add up, and that's when you start to get in trouble.
And that was my other question. Can you claim back VAT on shipping?
If your invoice, if your Royal Mail invoice has VAT on it, then yes.
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah. But
And,
one thing to point out as well with these transactions, so although they're Royal Mail, you see here it says PayPal in front of it.
mhm.
Usually what that means is that actually you paid for the Royal Mail transaction from PayPal.
Yep.
And this is one of the mistakes that people kind of make, is that they get excited. You put it through Receipt Bank, and Receipt Bank, this will go green because there's a £1.52 invoice to Royal Mail. But actually, this transaction is a movement in cash because it's going from
Ah,
bank to PayPal, and then PayPal you're paying Royal Mail. So
say that one more time for the video, because that's an important bit, because 90% of our expenses is either with Hermes, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing them, the shipping company, not the luxury bags, and then Royal Mail or UPS. So this bit's really important because naturally Royal Mail has its own standalone platform you can order directly from. So if you go through the list, you'll see some of them should just say Royal Mail from its own platform. eBay has its own platform that you can buy shipping from. And then, as you mentioned, you can pay for shipping via PayPal, which kind of gives you this third option of paying for shipping. So I guess you're saying it depends on where the movement of money is coming from.
exactly. So, and this could be anything. You could have bought, if you buy something on eBay, you usually pay via PayPal. So you'd have the same situation. You'd have an expense invoice that you've put through Xero. Xero would try and say, hey, let's match this payment to the invoice. But actually, what you need to do for these transactions is say it's a transfer to PayPal. And I'll show you, we'll double check it now. But if we go to the PayPal account and reconcile it, if we look on the 22nd of September, in the wrong tab, and yeah, so what you can see on the 22nd of September in the PayPal account, you've got some money coming in, and
The Royal Mail one's the second one I think you were looking for. Oh,
this
wait,
one
no.
here.
Oh, I'm not sure. Double check the amount.
The date, I might be off with the dates might be slightly different on the PayPal account. So let's
It was just
search
the
for,
amount I wanted to double check. I think you're right. It's just the amount. I just wanted to quickly double check the amount you saw on the other tab. So it was 22nd and it was £1.52. Oh, yeah, no, it's off.
yeah. So
It should be the
this,
same as today because we use the PayPal account's connected. So hopefully.
yeah, let's have a look. So let's search for the 152 instead. Sometimes there's a timing delay on PayPal between, because they've charged your card on one day and then taking it the next. So as we can see here, the money coming into PayPal was received as a general card deposit, and then it goes out on that day to PayPal. To Royal Mail. So this transaction on the 21st, which we'll try and find.
128. If you click on it.
Let's have a look. Almost. Let's go back about.
Almost. Oh.
So 152. So this is the one that if we put this.
Joe, if you hit more details, just quickly, where underneath there, it should give you a reference. Yeah, there's the reference 128, 82128. So that is the same one.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the email, and then it says related to. Yeah, it gives me what the order number was. So that's 82128, which is what I think I saw on the other one.
So what? Yeah, you put the purchase invoice on Xero, and you actually, this is where the expense is being incurred. And one of the mistakes that we see people make is that on the bank account, so we're in your tied account currently, they might match it here. And then what they do is here they also say, oh, I incurred Royal Mail. Because you're making so many expenses, you kind of forget. But then you've double counted your postage costs, and it's another reason why it's really important to make sure you match stuff to an invoice, because then you're not risking double counting things and stuff going wrong. So the actual way to deal with this, if you are paying via PayPal and it's coming from your bank, we use this transfer button and we say transfer to PayPal. So I'm going to do that for these Royal Mail ones. So transfer that one.
Oh, I was going to say to type the same reference and see if we can put it up, but that's all right.
Yeah, you could do, but that would probably be a bit overkill for what you need to do. So I would just transfer it across. And what I'm going to do is refresh the page, because hopefully it remembers what they are, he says, and it doesn't. So we're going to transfer these. Because these are all, they're not purchases, they're transfers. And the final one there. So those are going, this one here is probably the same. Now what we'll see now, so I've not refreshed the page yet, but when I refresh it, these have all gone green, because it's saying, you've got transfers from a bank account that are coming in on or around the same day. Are these the same? So we know that they're actually in relation to each other, so we can match them.
So, hang on, but those ones are not right, are they? General card deposit related to.
Yeah, because your PayPal account is charging your
So
card.
you've fixed it to a different account. You've gone to the main account now.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, that's it. I'm getting too quick. Sorry. We'll have
We
to do
scroll
this.
up just one more time for the video. So what happened there was, what we're saying is this, we're now reconciling what we spent on PayPal that's connected to our main bank account.
Yeah, and you're essentially saying that the money received into PayPal is that money that was spent from the bank account, and you're saying that it's not income on one and it's not an expense on another. It's just a movement in cash.
And that example there, where it says money received, is because it came from the bank account and PayPal, as the intermediary, held it before they passed it on to Royal Mail.
Exactly, yeah. And you were charged through your card. So they took it, PayPal took the money by charging your card. So it come from your card into your PayPal account. We then have to code it like that. And so those are dealt with. And then if we had the expense invoices posted on there through, say, Receipt Bank, these should go green, and then you would match those to that invoice. So like I said, there's a lot that goes on with Xero. And it's then why I was like, oh, it's to have to show people all the time. It takes longer than just me or someone in my team just doing it, because I'd like to think that we are quite good at it. We
Yeah, and
use
I
it like
think
8 hours a day for 5 days a
that's the
week.
one that baffled me the most. That how you show the movement of money from one account into another one. Now I understand it goes. So actually, can we just go through it one more time? So if we jump
Yeah.
back to the main bank account, we want to.
So here we are in the main bank
Ah,
account.
you're tab switching. That's why I can't see it. I'm watching your mouse and it's just flying.
Oh,
But
so
it's the super shortcut tab
yeah,
switching.
yeah.
Okay, I'm
Sorry,
with you
tab switching.
now. So
So
on the later pages, so it'd be more like
yeah.
the 24, 25 pages.
So let's go to the very beginning. Might make it easier.
Okay, yeah,
So this money,
yeah,
that's not a transfer between your bank accounts. This is just money that's come into Tide. Although it says PayPal, it's not come from your PayPal account. This one, possibly. So what I would do for this first, because it's got PP, I think it stands for PayPal, I'm going to
yeah,
check it. So in the PayPal account, I'm going to go to the very beginning, and we can't see that pound there. So it probably wasn't that. Let me go back. Now what I'm going to do, going through once, like glancing through this here, when there's
yeah,
PayPal star, that's going to be a transfer to the PayPal account. This, if we scroll up, is money spent. So
yeah.
it's money leaving Tide, but it's going to PayPal. So you can click transfer. If we then go to the PayPal account, we should see, I think it's this one. If I refresh the page and push F5, that's the money coming in there. So we know that on that date, that's coming, yeah?
Yeah.
And now what it says, this 24.95,
Oh,
we
but
should,
you might have been the one underneath it though for 45.98.
no, because PayPal's spending that money, we're matching the receipt. So in Tide, the money was spent from Tide to PayPal, and we match the receipt on this PayPal. Now, this spend from PayPal is going to Robert Dias. So you're making a purchase on Robert Dias' website or on eBay.
Yeah.
You're just seeing that as one purchase, but actually what's happened is the money has gone from your bank account to your PayPal account, and then from your PayPal account to Robert Dias. And that, so there's then several transactions there. If you had spent that in US dollars, you'd have an extra one because it would go from the bank to PayPal GBP, and then from PayPal GBP to PayPal USD, and then PayPal USD to the supplier.
That makes sense. I'm trying to email the Robert Dias one to just in case if it decides to wake up. No, that thing has really hung it.
You've broken it. I'll get in touch with their CEO, Adrian. Adrian, we've broken it.
Done something wrong.
It was Mark's fault. Don't blame my accountancy. Blame my.
Did it? And it wasn't even my fault. It was the guys with the dodgy.
You're going there, mate. Where's my 35p?
I should do.
I would. I'm an accountant. I'm tight.
But in this case, if I emailed it, that invoice would pop in, and then I'd match that one to my other one. So now I see why people say when you work with these intermediary platforms, it does add an extra layer of bookkeeping for you and your bookkeeper.
Yeah. Now, so I've shown you the kind of manual bit there. There are ways to speed these sort of things up. So if we go to, we're on page 1 of your Tide account. So I'm going to go to page 2, and we're going to find another, I don't think this is something separate. I'm going to ignore this because before they had PayPal Star. Let me just.
Oh, and the Amazon was a good one then. That would have been an Amazon payment in. There you go, Amazon payment, that one.
That might have to be for another video when we deal with Link My Books. But maybe they've changed the bank references here. Money into PayPal, PayPal received. So yeah, let's look at these PayPal received actually, and these PayPal payments. So that was page 2.
Are we in the PayPal account?
No, we're in the tied account again. And so here on the 1st of September, you've got 242 leaving tied.
Yeah. That should be shipping.
Yeah. So if I'm back in PayPal now. So we should expect to see 242 on the 1st of September enter in PayPal. Now then, there's a lot of pages between there and that.
Oh, you might think, oh yeah, one more back.
There we go. No. Maybe it's back. Maybe the dates have slightly off again. Just the way the banks work. So what I'm going to do now is click account transactions and search for it. No, bank statements. Sorry, that's where I need to go. And search for it. 2.42. So the reason I started digging into these ones suddenly was that they say PayPal payment, but the others previously said PayPal like with a star. And I'm just going to see if we can actually find any that do say PayPal star. So I'm going to search for PayPal. So for some reason they stopped in July. So, all right.
So this is all sorts you got to keep up with.
That's what I mean, though. So it's quite difficult to tell people this is exactly the answer, because a lot of the time what we do is then problem solving, and yeah, then having to, like, if you called me with this and I had to do it with you, I could do it in half the time without trying to explain what I'm doing. But what I was trying to get at is you can.
So now you said it's changed from PayPal star to also those ones there. So we're also looking for the ones without the star.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do now is, see, you've got this options button. Now we can create bank rules based on the information that's coming in. So these PayPal payments we know are actually transfers. So here you have to specify if it's a spend money, a receive money, or a transfer. So what I'm going to say is it's a transfer money rule, and essentially the rule is created based on the conditions that you set here. So I'm going to remove the first line because we don't care what the payee is equal. But what we're going to say is, well, if the description contains, and then I'm going to remove this section because this is always going to change based on every transaction. But what we know is probably going to be the same as this PayPal payment. So if the description contains PayPal payment, then create a transfer, and we're going to always want that to go between PayPal GBP. And the reference will be set. That doesn't really matter. Target bank account rule. So you're going to say that's either going to be all your bank accounts or the current account. I like to avoid always saying all because I've not looked at the other accounts and we don't know if this thing has happened before. Better to be kind of safe than mess things up. And then give the rule a title. So I would call that like PayPal transfer. And then when we say save, what it should hopefully do is whenever we have those conditions, it will automatically suggest that PayPal transfer. So before, rather than having to click and see it, you can automatically click it. And hopefully, when we do this in a sec, so you've got PayPal transfer.
How come I wasn't green like the other ones?
because um, they only go green if you're matching an invoice. So they slight difference, just to let you know it's a rule that you're dealing with. Yeah, so let's match a few of those. I'll try and find one more. Okay, so if we go back to the actual reconciliation page on PayPal, it was about the 1st of September, wasn't it, that those started? Let's go back a few. So what we should hopefully see is that money coming in. Yeah, so you see there's quite a big date difference. That's usually just due to differences in reports on how PayPal and your bank will categorize it. So you send the money from one to the other, they might both just, the cash is in transit between the two. But we know that this probably is that.
That's probably a bank holiday, probably a weekend or something, because it's two
Yeah,
days out. So first,
yeah,
second, and the Monday would have been the third. I'm guessing. I'm not an
yeah,
accountant.
exactly. So I'm not going to click this just yet, but see there's this other money's now coming in. So it's saying there's a general card deposit. So now I wonder, have you, well, two things. One, we might have missing transactions on the tied account because, like I said, we haven't physically checked the statement balance yet. So there might be stuff missing. And two, you might have your personal card set up to it.
No.
If you've got a business partner, they might be using their personal card. Like there's,
So what does a general credit card deposit?
yeah,
It might have
could
been the
just be,
shipping refund because it's just both the same.
yeah. The general card deposit usually means that money's come in from a card, which then could be linked to a bank account. But yes, there's a lot of stuff that you need to think about. I think we've sort of approaching an hour and a half mark. I'll
Yeah.
obviously try and trim a load of this down. Has that been
Oh my
beneficial
God.
at all?
Yeah, it has. If at all you wanted to boil it down, zoom in, double click, whatever the new buzzword is, it will be around the PayPal piece. Actually, let me start in order. It was that reconciliation is just categorization. It really helped bring the accounting world down to a much more common man understanding. That almost triggered a light bulb. That was useful. The expenses is then invaluable because that was my previous question around how do you keep these receipts? Why do you keep these receipts? You explained it beautiful and slam dunked it with the receipt bank app. I know it let us down, but I do believe in it. I definitely think we should do something around that because literally I've been using Tide to do it. So I'd rather just use this and know it's created the invoice.
Mhm.
So the reconciliation piece, that bit around creating invoices, why that's important and actually how it relates to expenses was really, really useful. And then now the understanding of double counting, I think is what you called it. So
Yeah.
yes, we put the multiple accounts in because online everyone's like, oh, don't put multiple accounts in because you're going to double count. So I think you've helped squash that myth by just giving an understanding. Those would definitely be the three highlights for me out of the video. Everything else was great, especially around the walkthrough and the numbers and everything else. But those three pieces, categorization, the invoices and submit expense claims, and then working with multiple accounts and the transfer of money.
Cool. Well, I'm glad it was useful. We'll definitely do another one because we'll look at Receipt Bank and have a look at Link My Books as well through Amazon for you.
And
Yeah,
then in terms of what I've done so far, would you recommend I unreconcile everything now and just start fresh? Oh,
personally, yeah. If
is that something quick I could do? I know you showed me how to do it individually. Is there like a
yeah,
select budget
so
button?
bonus content here for the end to remove stuff in bulk or from any account. So we're in the PayPal account currently. If we wanted to remove all the transactions, I'd go to account transactions, and in the account transactions, this only means all the ones that have been currently reconciled. Even though it says unreconciled, that kind of means something else. Like if you're moving money between bank accounts, that's why it will show there. bank statements shows you every single actual transaction. This shows all the ones that are there. So account transactions, I would tick that, check that box. Luckily for you, you've got less than 50 items, and remove and redo. You can do 200 maximum at a time. And when you do have them when you've got like a client that's got about 65,000 transactions, sometimes it can take you all day having to, and that's why like I'm so used to using the keyboard now to jump between tabs and things, because you've got to be really efficient to get through like so much data like that.
And then the same for the other accounts then. So where you've got the mouse just above paid.
Yeah. So just to point out, because I've removed all the transactions, this balance has gone to 0, and the statement balance is still the same. So we're going to go to the bank account, the tied account, click account transactions. Now currently we've got 35 items. So this balance is negative 300. This is positive. When I remove them all, Xero's thinking. This has now gone to 0, and this has gone to 77. So the first thing I would do before even reconciling stuff is check this statement balance as of the 16th, which is today.
No,
it's wrong. So we're going to be missing some information. So yeah, that in itself is it's a whole topic.
Because that bit, oh sorry, it's not my current balance on my account in my app. You mean the statement balance as of
on the 16th? So it seems like it's up to date. So what we can do, if we want to check it for yesterday, because there might be a couple of transactions today missing, you go into the statement and then there's this reconciliation report. If you click that, you can then select on this drop down the day. So if we go to the 15th, what is your bank balance showing now?
Now it's £18.55.
Okay, so if I push update, it should be what on the 15th? Sorry,
51.
So it'd be £51 spot on.
Yeah, £51.
Okay, so when I click update, if all things are correct, it will show that. No, so it's 17.04. So 51 minus 17.
What am I doing?
So you're missing £33.96. It probably means that sometimes the bank feeds break, and sometimes they're just set up and there's a day missing. Sometimes actually a major issue with Xero is that it deletes transactions when there's 2 or 3 on the same day. It thinks
it has been doing that. So if you look, there was loads of deletes I saw.
Okay, so if we go to bank statements, and these are all unreconciled, that's okay. I'm going to change it to 200 so we can see all of them. Yeah, that deleted. Now, for some reason, it's deleting these. I don't want
twice. The Amazon one's in there twice.
Yeah, so sometimes it's correct. Deleting them is the right thing. So it automatically knows. And this is the thing why like, part of what we do is having to check stuff and make sure it's right. And then digging into those problems. So I couldn't tell you exactly what's happened, but you can see at a glance, these are genuine duplicates.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're not. If you would
I think it happened because I connected it, but before that I also uploaded the statement because I didn't realize the connection.
I see. Yeah, like you can see it says imported and bank feed. So fortunately, Xero has said, okay, let's just delete the ones that are already there.
Because I think this is why I did that, because I think some were missing. So I said, let me try importing it.
Yeah. So what might have happened is one of them might be a slightly different day, and then something's just gone missing. So the amount we were looking for was 33.96.
Let me just double check. How can I check what the statement balance is? Because I might be reading this wrong. I just want to make sure I'm reading this rightly myself.
Okay. So on the bank account, if you look at the last transaction of the day on the 15th, they usually say, depends on the bank, but it should say what the balance was at that day.
These guys don't do. So this is why I was just asking. They do it in a very funny way. Bear with me and let me see if I can quickly log on and see if an online portal is published.
But what we can do is if you have any sort of statement from your bank, so from Tide, so let's say you had one and they only showed you the month end balance, we could look at the end of September, might be easier. And one of the checks that we do as accountants when we prepare your year end documents is we ask you for the physical bank statement or PDF of it. And that way we just check that balance is the same. It's a really simple thing, but if it's different, then suddenly you know you're going to have to start looking into something.
Because these guys don't, it's just transaction, category, amount. They don't actually give you your running bank balance, which is annoying. So I'm guessing somewhere I can generate.
Yeah, you might have to ask them for a statement that shows the balance on the.
Cool. Oh, here we go. I've got a statement. So we want it for September.
Yeah, 30th of September. So according to this, it should have been 84.12, but this is saying the imported balance was 1.2.
Yeah, that's what's on my statement.
84.12.
No, on the piece of the balance on 30th of September 2020, according to the Tide bank account statement, is £122.64.
Yeah. So what we can see here, so you see you've got this statement balance line.
Oh, I see.
There's an imported, so because you've got the bank feed set up, they know that it should have been this. So there's that 38.52. So actually earlier I calculated that it was 33.96, but actually between, so on September, 30th of September, it was 38.52, but then on yesterday or today, it was potentially 33.96 out. But you said that you weren't sure about the balance yesterday, so it's probably more likely to be 38.52 out.
And
So,
how can I find that missing piece?
pardon me?
How can I find that missing piece? Start from the beginning. So if I
Got
go
to problem solve. Yeah, you have to, there's different ways. You could either look at every single month end and then see when the difference happens. Maybe I would.
We opened it, and that was when I think when you first saw it. So I would change that drop down from where you've got from the 1st of September to July, where it says bank statement. Sorry, I know you have to drop off. This is my last one, and then we can. Oh, so where it says bank statement there, you would, if you was troubleshooting, you would change the from date to the 1st.
You could do so, but what I was doing was going back one more. But you could go back as far as whenever you opened it.
We opened it July.
Yeah. So here, see, I don't like the way they present it here, which is why I went back. I'm going to go back and just show you how I would do it. So I would go into the bank account.
Yep.
And then you've got bank statements here. I guess it'll show you every statement line. It's just, it doesn't compress it. It's a bit weird. So the very first one the last one they've got, so they don't let you sort it. But if we go to the
no, Xero.
Oh no, but you can go to the bottom. So the first one here is £5 received and a penny received. So these are probably correct.
Okay. Yeah, £5 received, £5 received. Yep.
Then a penny, then 50, then 1, then 40. So
yep. And then minus £76. Yep. Then minus £1, then £1 back in, then stock of 226, and then Costco, and then that's it for that month.
Yeah, so you basically just have to figure that needle in the haystack. There are different ways, but yeah.
Yes, you've got to touch on your next video then. This is going to be the next one as well. No, thank you so much. I have learned loads and loads.
That is the end of the episode. I really hope you enjoyed the walkthrough that I gave Mark about Xero. And as I said at the beginning of this video, if you've got any other questions about Xero or any basic business questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. I will read them and I'll respond to you. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and make sure you click subscribe so that you stay up to date on all the latest videos. Thanks so much for watching. Speak soon.